All right, let's jump right in. We're going to look at this incredible 10-year period where an 80-kilometer stretch of water, well, it didn't just connect two oceans. Nope, it became the exact pivot point for a brand new world order. It literally gave birth to a superpower and completely redefined what global power even meant. And, the historical irony here is just off the charts. I mean, think about it. At the very moment the world is celebrating this incredible feat of peace and engineering, the Panama Canal, it's also plunging itself into the greatest war it had ever seen, in the trenches of Europe. It's like two completely opposite destinies unfolding at the exact same time. So let's really set the scene, because this truly is a tale of two worlds. In the summer of 1914, humanity was simultaneously pulling off one of its greatest acts of creation, while at the same time starting its single greatest act of self-destruction. What's just wild is how close these events were. On July 28th, war is declared in Europe. Just 18 days later, 18, on August 15th, the first ship makes its official trip through the Panama Canal. It's as if history itself was presenting humanity with two completely different paths forward, all in the same month. A journalist back then just captured the moment perfectly with this quote. And it wasn't just some clever turn of phrase. It was the literal truth. One side of the world was busy connecting everything, while the other side was just tearing itself to pieces. And get this, for a piece of foreshadowing, just a few months before he dragged Europe into war, the German Kaiser, Wilhelm II, sends a telegram to the canal's chief engineer. He congratulates him on the achievement, but then adds this little kicker. "We regret it is not ours." That mix of admiration and pure envy tells you everything you need to know about how powerful the canal was seen, even before it was a year old. Okay, so beyond all the historical drama, the canal kicked off an immediate and, frankly, revolutionary change in economics. It completely changed the math of global trade by basically compressing the entire globe. And the change was just monumental. Before 1914, if you were a ship, you were facing this treacherous 10,000-plus mile journey all the way around Cape Horn. After, it was a simple 80-kilometer transit. The canal didn't just create a shortcut, it literally redrew the map of global commerce. And in real-world terms, the impact was just staggering. For a ship sailing from New York to San Francisco, the travel time was slashed by 75%. A journey that took 60 days now took just 15. That's not an improvement, that's a complete annihilation of distance. And the ripple effects from that were just massive. All of a sudden, you've got lower fuel costs, you're paying crews for less time, and there's way less wear and care on your ships. And for businesses, getting your goods to market that much faster meant you got your money back that much faster. The whole engine of global trade just started to hum. This created entirely new markets out of thin air. For example, take bananas from Central America. The old route was just too long, they'd all rot. The canal made it possible to get them to the US East Coast while they were still fresh, and that fueled a massive banana boom. It also unlocked the so-called isolated mines of Chile and Peru, connecting all their copper and nitrates to the industrial centers of America and Europe. So, of course, an economic earthquake of that magnitude is going to lead to a geopolitical one. The canal became the ultimate symbol of a huge power shift that was already happening. You can really capture this whole shift with this one powerful metaphor. For centuries, Great Britain was the lion, the undisputed king of the jungle. But World War I absolutely exhausted it. At the same time, the United States, just fueled by its industrial power, became the new Croesus, that fabulously wealthy king. The scales of global power were visibly tipping. And here's the breakdown of how that happened. On one side, you have the UK, totally drained by the war, drowning in debt, a lot of which it owed to the US, and it was losing its grip on markets all over the world. But America went from being a nation that owed money to being the world's biggest lender. Its factories and farms were supplying the entire Allied war effort, turning it into an absolute economic juggernaut. The historian David McCullough put it perfectly. The canal wasn't just a project. It was a 50-mile-long declaration of intent. It was America announcing to the whole world that it wasn't just a regional player anymore. It was a global power, and it was here to stay. But here's the thing. This new power came with a brand new problem. When you own the most valuable piece of real estate on the planet, it instantly becomes the world's biggest target. This led the US military to a huge critical question. How in the world do you defend the most valuable 80 kilometers on Earth? The answer would completely transform the canal zone itself. Strategists at the time called the canal the Golden Achilles heel. It was the U.S. Navy's greatest asset, letting fleets zip between oceans, but it was also its single greatest vulnerability. Just one well-placed bomb could paralyze it. And the threats were very real. German U-boats, sabotage from enemy agents, maybe even a full-on invasion. So this solution was unprecedented. The U.S. decided to turn the entire canal zone into the most heavily guarded fortress in the Western Hemisphere. They built this ring of massive coastal forts, like Fort Sherman on the Atlantic side and Fort Amador on the Pacific. And they doubled the number of troops there, from about 3,000 to over 6,000 soldiers. And the level of innovation here was just remarkable. We're not just talking about soldiers with rifles. No way. They set up a submarine base at Coco Solo way back in 1917. They brought in mobile heavy artillery. And by the early 1920s, they were already experimenting with the very first radar and hydrophone systems to detect ships and subs. It was a projection of high-tech power right in the middle of a tropical jungle. So, when you put it all together, the engineering marvel, the economic dominance, the military fortress, what you're really seeing is the foundation of a new kind of empire. You are watching the forging of what would become the American century. A World War I veteran who was sailing home through the canal in 1919 wrote this down in his diary. In just a few hours, his ship crossed a continent. But in just a few years, his country had crossed an entire historical threshold, from being a regional power to a global one. And this image, right here, it just captures the canal's dual identity perfectly. Yes, it was an engine of global commerce, absolutely, but it was also an unmatched instrument of military might. It was the physical proof of America's brand new role in the world. And really, who better to have the final word than Theodore Roosevelt himself, the man whose vision drove this whole thing? He didn't just see a waterway. He saw it as the umbilical cord connecting America to its global destiny. And right there, in those 80 kilometers of water, stone, and steel, a new era was born.